To me, the most egregious thing about The Brutalist isn't just the fact that they used AI to make Adrian Brody's Hungarian accent better, it's the fact that this movie is 3 hours and 35 minutes long, and it still does not manage to resolve every plot point and conflict introduced in the first half of the movie. Because what do you mean this movie is 25 minutes shy of 4, count 'em, 4 hours? And by the time the movie ends, you are left with so many loose ends that if you pull on any one of them, the movie falls apart. What do you mean this movie is the same length as half of a 9 to 5 workday? You can clock into work at 8:30 in the morning, and by the time the movie's over, it's well into lunchtime. And this isn't to say that I'm against movies that are long. I think there are plenty of movies that tell a great story that are long. At the risk of sounding like a pretentious douchebag, Godfather Part 2 tells a multi-generational story making parallels between Michael Corleone and his father Vito Corleone, both inheriting the title of Godfather. And if we're going on the opposite end of film snobbery, we have Avengers Endgame, which at 3 hours and 1 minute perfectly wraps up 11 years, 23 movies, and over 50 hours of story, and it's still shorter than The Brutalist. I mean, ask any Lord of the Rings fans how many times they've watched the extended editions of the trilogy, which equals just over 11 hours of elves and hobbits and orcs. All of this being proof that it's not that people don't want to watch long movies, it's that people don't want to watch unnecessarily long movies. I suppose to prevent this from being exclusively a rant and more into educational content, I'm gonna have to give you some backstory on filmmaking and film history, so buckle up! The first ever feature film is a movie called The Story of the Kelly Gang, which came out in 1906 and was a whopping 70 minutes. Which isn't a lot by today's standards. Back then, movie lengths were determined by the length of a reel, which averages about 9 to 11 minutes depending on the reel, and the average movie is like 8 or 9 reels. Granted, after we switched to digital, we were no longer encumbered by the length of a reel dictating how long the movie was, because reels were expensive, so if you made the movie too long, the movie cost too much money, and then you couldn't make the movie. The average length of movies has increased over time, but that isn't to say that every single movie out is extremely long, because that's not true. In the early 1900s, movies were around 15 minutes long and played in Nickelodeons, and some of you are finding out for the first time that Nickelodeon wasn't just a children's channel, but in fact a type of theater in the early 1900s. Eventually we get into the 1930s, and the 1930s have an average runtime of 90 minutes, which is what most people consider the average feature-length film. Between the 50s and the 80s, it kind of averages out at about 100 to 110 minutes for a really long time, but then we get into the 90s, the 2000s, and it gets a little bit longer. When entering the 2000s, the average movie length was 126 minutes. And now going into the 2020s, some of the highest grossing movies are all well over 200 minutes. Emphasis on the highest grossing films being over 200 minutes, because movie lengths have stayed more or less the same in the last couple of decades, but when you have advertisements for Dune, or Killers of the Flower Moon, or Oppenheimer, it can feel like every movie is too long. When really it's just that these movies have much higher budgets because of either the director or who knows, they just are in your face a lot more. I mean, even Wicked recently was over 2.5 hours, and that's almost the entirety of the Broadway show, and the Broadway show is about 3 hours. So, say you're like me and you like watching all of the Oscar-nominated movies before the Oscars so that you can get mad when eventually the ones that you want to win don't win. All of the Best Picture nominees are well over 2 hours, with The Brutalist being the longest Best Picture nominee this year. How long would it take you to watch every single Best Picture nominee this year? About 26 hours. Now, the average person, moviegoer or not, doesn't have the time to sit and watch these extraordinarily long movies unless they're really, really, really good. A lot of people throw on a movie while they're doing other things, so much so that Netflix executives are telling writers to dumb down the movie by having the characters out loud say what they're doing. This is so dystopian to me that we've come to this point, because that's just the nature of movies nowadays. Not a lot of people have the time to sit down and watch 3 hours and 35 minutes of The Brutalist, 2 hours and 20 minutes of The Nickel Boys, 2 hours and 49 minutes, I think, of Dune Part 2. Even The Substance is 2 hours and 20 minutes. So what's the solution? I don't know. I'm one of the bozos that is sitting down to watch these extraordinarily long movies because I love movies. It's my favorite form of art, so I set aside time in my schedule. What I do know is that I don't think that dumbing down the writing in Netflix series or movies is going to be the fix that they think that it is. Maybe it's more selectivity on what movies get made and by whom, because lately there have been a couple of movies that I will not name in particular that absolutely could have benefited from somebody pulling on the reins of it, but I digress. Of course there's a conversation to be had somewhere about, oh, my AC turned on, I hope that does not make a lot of noise, and the doesn't seem to be an issue with the air conditioning blowing directly at my microphone. I'll find out in post. Are Rode microphones worth it? Let's see. Of course there's a conversation to be had about social media affecting everybody's attention span, but I don't have the wherewithal to dive into that right now because I don't think that that's entirely the issue. Going back to what I said in the beginning, I think people are more than willing to watch long movies. You just have to make them entertaining enough. Titanic is 3 hours and 15 minutes and people watch that movie all the time. Forrest Gump is long. People love that movie. The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption. All of these movies are absolutely fantastic and long, and people like them. These are movies from decades ago that still have rewatchability because they're so good. Also, at the end of the day, you don't have to watch the long movies. Crazy, I know, but you can just not watch them. That's fine. You are not more or less of a person for preferring to watch shorter movies. Just like if you're a big reader, doesn't matter the length of the book, you're still a reader because you're reading books. There's nothing wrong with a movie being long or short. I am merely commenting on the public's fatigue on some of the seemingly best movies and the movies you have to watch being so long. Because if we're checking tape on which short movies are absolutely fantastic, we've got a bunch. We've got Stand By Me, we've got Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, we've got The Lion King, we've got Eraserhead, we've got Zombieland. We've got so many fantastic options for all kinds of movie lengths, all kinds of genres, all kinds of things that will fit the need of the viewer at any given time. Anyway, I don't really know how to end this video. I just wanted to rant about The Brutalist. Thanks for watching me yap about movies once again. Let me know what your favorite movies are that are really long or really short, or any other opinion you may have on the state of movie lengths. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!